Welcome to Municipal Affairs. I'm Christopher Brown. As autumn slowly turns into winter, it is one of the busiest times of the years for Alberta municipalities and the provincial government. Over the past month and a half, urban and rural municipalities from across the province have come together for two major events. At the end of September, Alberta municipalities gathered in Red Deer, drawing urban leaders from cities, towns, villages, and summer villages to tackle the challenges facing Alberta's growing communities. And earlier this month of November, rural municipalities of Alberta held their annual AGM in Edmonton, where rural leaders shared the distinct issues shaping rural Alberta. For both gatherings, there was a strong provincial presence, with members of the Alberta government making appearances. But one cabinet minister in particular has been front and center: Ric McIver, Alberta's Minister of Municipal Affairs under Premier Danielle Smith. McIver took the stage at both conventions, speaking directly to leaders from every corner of the province, bringing a message of collaboration while also listening closely to the needs and concerns coming from both urban and rural municipal leaders. Now, we caught up with Minister McIver to hear his thoughts on this season's meetings. From his role as the provincial liaison to municipalities, he will share his key takeaways in our interview, reflecting on the conversations he had and the themes that emerged from both conventions. Stay with us as we explore what Minister McIver sees on the horizon for Alberta municipalities and what comes next as the province and its communities work side by side for everyone. Are you passionate about local governance and municipal issues? Do you believe in the power of community-driven conversations? Then join us at the Cross Border Network, where we bring together voices from across Canada to shine a spotlight on the challenges and the triumphs of our municipalities. But we need your support to keep the conversation going. Visit crossborderinterviews.ca today to show your support by backing the show monthly or making a one-time annual donation. Your contribution will help us grow and expand our reach, bringing important stories to even more listeners across the nation. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can amplify the voices of local communities. Together, we can shape a brighter future for all. Cross Border Network, where local matters and your support counts. Visit us today at crossborderinterviews.ca. Minister McIver, thank you so much for sitting down with me. It has been a busy month in the world of municipal affairs across the province of Alberta. Alberta municipalities at the end of September, and just recently with the RMA in Edmonton just last week. What did you take away from last week's convention in Edmonton from an RMA perspective?
Well, I think the relationship's good. It's strong. We've got some issues to iron out, which is not unusual. And yeah, I think things are going, I suppose, the way they're supposed to go. They advocate for what municipalities need. When they get it, good. When they don't, they sometimes complain. But that's fair, right? That's their job, and I don't have a problem with that. And it's important for me and for our government to listen carefully to them so we understand which things they might be unhappy about, and B, actually put some effort into seeing which ones we can solve for them.
Well, let's talk about some of the issues, because I listened to both. I would say 3 hours bear pit sessions, for the hour and a half on the first day, hour and a half on the second day. And a lot of different concerns came out of those bear pit sessions, where the municipal officials were able to directly ask ministers, your colleagues, questions. Were you surprised at any of the questions that were asked, or were they in line with what you were hearing directly from members when you talked to municipal leaders?
Well, to be clear, I know my file better than I know some of the other ministers' files, but the general tone and tenor and subject matter was mostly unsurprising. Water is an issue in some parts of the province. Unpaid oil and gas is something we've been wrestling with for a little while. We haven't solved yet. I think the ministers gave some really good answers to some of the questions, and I heard afterward from people afterwards saying, we really appreciate the minister showing up, getting on the hot seat providing information. And there's several cases where I or other ministers said, okay, we'll get have our staff get your contact information. We'll follow up with you on that, which is all part of the process and the way it's kind of designed to work. So, yeah, I think I would call it successful.
Well, one of the overarching themes that I heard during the RMA convention, even going back to Alberta Municipality, was affordability.
Mhm.
Municipalities seem to be struggling, and I'm preaching to the choir because you probably hear it more than I do. Do you think that this government's doing enough to help municipalities during this affordability crisis?
No government ever does enough. Listen, we haven't got enough money either. Okay. To do all the things we'd like to do. The federal government, I'm sure, don't think they have enough money. And in this way, I'd say we're all right. It doesn't take away our responsibility to stretch the dollars that we have as far as we can to just try to make good decisions about spending money on things that are high priorities for our voters and our citizens. Uh, and Yeah, listen, and on affordability, let's face it, inflation hasn't just it has touched municipalities. It's made it very hard on them. But we're feeling the same pain at the province. Every time we try to go to build a road, a school, a hospital, pay for social services, it's all more expensive. And I'm sure if the feds were here on this call, so they would say the same thing. But I don't know. We need to. But this is important. That's an important part of the communication to share both the good news and the tough news and work together on it the best that we can.
One of the things that you mentioned during your speech, the RMA convention, was the carbon tax. Municipalities are giving a portion of their revenue to the federal government, which does not get reimbursed to them. And if you talk to the mayor of Lloydminster, he'll say this is a big concern for him. If you talk to smaller municipalities, this is a big concern for a lot of small town mayors or even rural municipal leaders. I hate to sort of ask an easy question, but I'm going to. Do you get a sense that the issues around the carbon tax are being heard in Ottawa?
No, it's too bad because you know what? Even during the opposition's leadership contest, two or three of the folks they who would be leader threw the carbon tax under the bus after them being the biggest proponents of it and them saying it was going to be the answer for everything. Well, apparently they're waking up, at least some of them are, to the fact that Albertans are not in agreement with that. Albertans are not on with it, and that sentiment is spreading across Canada. Everybody seems to get the message, except the people with the authority to change it.
One of the big events during the RMA convention was the election of Cara Westerland, councillor from Brazeau County and VP of RMA, now president of RMA. What do you hope to have a relationship with the new president of RMA heading into 2025 like?
You know what? I've known Kara a long time. We've got a good relationship, and I don't see any reason why that won't continue. I chatted with her after she won, and we just agreed that we would work together. And neither one of us, I think, believes that means we're going to agree on everything every day. But a respectful working relationship means you can be honest about things you're happy with, things you're unhappy with, because that's the best way to solve the shortfalls. And I look forward to a great working relationship with Kara, and I know that she's smart, she's tough, she's intelligent. She'll be a great representative for rural municipalities in Alberta. She'll do her very best not to let our government off the hook on anything. Um, and all that's good. All that's the way it's supposed to be. So I like, how could I be unhappy about that? Uh, my job is to listen and do what we can for them. And when we can't, try to explain why not.
The only reason I know this is because I just spoke to Tyler Gandam, president of Alberta Municipalities, but I know you're sitting down with him later on this month in a one-on-one
Yeah.
conversation about challenges. Are you hoping to have a similar sit down with Cara as well? Because I know during convention it can be sometimes busy as she's
Yeah.
being pulled in different directions, but are you hoping to have similar sit down with her?
The answer is the same. Yes. If they want a meeting, the answer is always yes. Not always the same day, but the answer is always yes. And they know that. And you know, as much as Tyler and I haven't agreed everything in the last year, he's always said, and I agreed, that he always returns my calls and I always return his. And that's a good, respectful, positive working relationship. I I'm sure well the same with Kara now that she's president, and I'm sure she'll be a fierce advocate for rural municipalities. And gosh, that's what's needed.
You were somewhat the liaison from municipalities to the province to Premier Smith. Does Premier Smith want a conversation with Tyler or Cara as well? Because I know earlier on this year there was conversation about potentially meeting after
Oh,
conventions to
gosh.
talk about resolutions. But are you hoping that the Premier and you can sit down with them as well, or is she going to be in on that November 19th meeting?
She will if she wants to be. Anybody that knows Premier Smith, she does not back down from conversations.
Yeah.
Um, and I admire that about her. I mean, sometimes that can be a little inconvenient for me and other ministers, but uh, Albertans should be really pleased that their premier will take on all comers for a conversation. You know, whether they're happy or unhappy, and I admire that about Premier Smith as well. And believe me, she listens. You know, I get hard questions, and other ministers will tell you we get hard questions from the premier all the time about what are you doing about this, or these somebody's complaining about that. Can you do anything about it? Will you do anything about it? When are you going to do something about it? And that's keeps us all on our toes, uh, and I think that's great leadership. She really doesn't really ignore the issues as the issues crop up.
So going back to the conventions for a second here before I let you go, because I am cautious of time and I know you're a busy man. Um, you sat down with urban, rural municipal leaders at Alberta Municipalities and RMA. What do you do with that information now that you are back in session? Are you digesting what you've learned and trying to make policy for next year, 2025, or are you just sort of mulling it over, seeing where the province can work with municipalities on issues that you agree on?
All the above. You know what? There's lots of internal discussions with. Listen, I sat on Treasury Board for years. I haven't been on there for a couple of years, but my words, and it's not. I say it tongue in cheek, but the words I always say is Treasury Board's where dreams go to die. But what that means is we ministers, when we go to Treasury Board with our financial requests for our stakeholders, need to have our homework done. And if you don't have your homework done, the answer is definitely going to be no. And even when you do have your homework done, depending on whether the cupboard's bare or not and what other priorities you're up against, and let's face it, we're always up against healthcare and education because they're the two major things that every government does. So you don't always get what you want, but listen, we've been able to make some progress. We work with municipalities. We got the local government fiscal framework approved, where their revenue goes up and down with ours, which means a 13+% increase this next year. It also means about a 3% drop the year after. And we know, see, that's the great thing about even the drop is they know 2 years ahead or a year and a half ahead, which is predictable. It's one of the things they ask for: predictable, sustainable. So their revenue, and they said they want to be in the boat with us. When our tide goes up for us, they want their revenue to go up. When the tide goes down with us, to sit there, they'll live with that too. And so we did that. I was happy to announce at the convention that even though the federal government on the RCMP is inflicting upon the municipalities is it 39 or 20, a huge, massive increase next year. We're at least for the first year of that, we're protecting the municipalities from that at the province. So that's a $27 million uh, amount of money that we're catching for at least for 1 year for the municipalities that they would have to pay for their RCMP contract. So we're working with them the best we can. We're still dealing with the oil and gas issue. I made it clear in front of the 1,000 or so RMA people there that, listen, as far as I'm concerned, if the companies aren't paying their taxes, they should be put out of business, and the AER should do that. That was what I thought then. It's what I think now. I don't get to tell the AER what to do, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to. You know what? I'm not going to defend bad behavior on the few companies, because to be clear, the vast majority of oil and gas companies pay their taxes, pay their land leases, super good corporate citizens, contribute to the community. But there is a small cohort of bad behaving companies that, in my opinion, should be put out of business.
I know he's the past president now, but I hear Paul McLaughlin screaming, saying, "Thank God he's saying that," because that's what I've been trying to get them to say for the last few years. So I just want to put that on the record.
Well,
Um,
no, and Paul was a fierce advocate too, and him and I have had those conversations. And I was proud to say at the convention, he pointed out to him, he says that I am an ally, and then I'd like to think that I am. I don't get to say yes to everything.
yeah.
Sometimes, I guess sometimes, and here's the funny thing: they sometimes it's because I don't agree with them, and sometimes I go to Treasury Board and I don't get my way. But do the best we can and listen and work with them, and that's the best way to make any progress that we can make.
So this is the last major convention for Alberta municipalities and RMA prior to the next municipal elections here in the province of Alberta in 2025. What do you do now? Because this is going to be, and we always call it silly season because elections are silly sometimes. This is a point when a lot of people are going to be running for things and they're going to be turning away from the provincial government and focusing on local issues. What does the province do in 2025 that will be different from 2024?
We buy a box of popcorn and we watch. No, you know
Best
what?
answer I've gotten.
We still do our job.
Yeah.
And to be clear, you rightly called it the silly season. Every government selection period can be the silly season. Some municipalities will focus on local issues. Some will ramp up rhetoric against us in the provincial government. Some will ramp up rhetoric against the federal government. There's all manners of ways that people try to get themselves elected or reelected, and we'll see all of that. Count on that. You'll see all kinds of loud and aggressive stuff, and that's part of the proper part of the electoral process. And you know what? In fairness, those people that they want to vote for them need to know that they know what the issues are. They need to know that they're fiercely advocating for those issues, even if it's to the provincial government, and all that's fair ball. And we'll have a new crop on October 20 next year, or October 21, and away we go again. And that's because it is the show that never ends, because people never stop needing support at the municipal level or the provincial level or the federal level. And isn't it a good thing that the political process allows for that continuity?
Okay, so this is good. This is my last question. I promise this is my last question. As someone who ran for municipal politics himself and now a provincial and now liaison between municipalities and the province, what advice would you give the next crop of municipal leaders in this election as they're about to put their name on? Because we're seeing people already starting to put their hands up and saying, "I want to be on the ballot." What advice would you give them as a former municipal leader and municipal affairs minister?
Well, I would just say to anybody running, you're running for the job as servant. When most people we elected people, they see us standing up in front of a microphone with people listening, and maybe that makes us look important or smart. I don't know. Maybe depends on what we say. Maybe it doesn't make us look smart, but they see that being at the front of the room and having people listen, and that is part of the job. But the more important part of the job is serving citizens, is taking calls at the municipal level, taking calls. My garbage wasn't picked up, the dog's barking, the grass wasn't cut at the play field that my kid goes to. I needed a crosswalk to make the street, fill the potholes in my municipality. Like so many. Like I was elected 3 times municipally and now 4 times provincially. But you know what? Honestly, and that's my favorite part of the job is doing the work, serving people. This is funny. You'll enjoy this. My least favorite part of the job is the part that the legislation requires me to do, is sit in the House and pass legislation. I do it because it's my job, okay, and I do my due. But the good part, the fun part, is being that servant, is taking the calls, is listening to people, is trying to solve problems. See, that's satisfying. And I would say to people that think that they want to be an elected person, be ready to serve. This isn't about everybody, you barking through a microphone and everybody else listening to how brilliant you are. This is supposed to be about you making their lives better. And I would give the same advice to people running provincially or federally too. All elected jobs are supposed to be servants' jobs.
Minister, I want to thank you so much for the bone in my heart for sitting down with me. Always a pleasure. And unless something happens, probably chat to you in 2025.
I hope so, Chris. And thank you for your interest this morning.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Municipal Affairs. As you notice, we have been off this week, but we will be back in the swing of things next week, gearing up for our year in review episodes later on in December. So you do not want to miss that. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to this or watching this. Till next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll be back here on another episode of Municipal Affairs. Till then, everyone.